Hello again, I'm Gary Isaacs with the Ike Pickett Show. It's Saturday again, so let's take a break from the rat race and make a 30-minute trip from Ashton, Idaho up the old highway toward the west gate of Yellowstone Park. We'll travel about a quarter of a mile north from here to our destination at Upper Mesa Falls. There's another video that shows the trip to Lower Mesa Falls. If you haven't seen it yet, you can see it on the Ike Pickett Show on YouTube. I hope you'll click the icon on the lower right corner of my videos and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of the Ike Pickett shows and comments on this channel and on the website myintegritypath.com. So let's turn left here and drop down to as close to the edge of Henry's Fork as we can get on wheels. There's the South Fork of the Snake River that comes into Idaho from Wyoming that we can see on another episode of the Ike Pickett Show. Here we are at the parking lot. There's a lodge you can see there on the right. This is a popular place with a lot of visitors in the summertime. This is a pathway from the parkway down to the edge of the river canyon. Here is a picture of the falls we can see at the end of the walkway. When I was about 12 years old, my dad stopped for a break at a restaurant in Ashton on his way back to the sawmill at Warm River. He had just made a lumber delivery to a customer, and as he sat at the counter, he overheard a conversation between some strangers at a table nearby. They were talking about abandoning an attempt to put a cable across the North Fork, just below Upper Mesa Falls, to take some video for a Paramount Pictures movie. Dad, being one for a challenge and an adventure, intervened the conversation and offered to put the cable across the river for them. His offer was accepted, so he drove to the sawmill, shut the operation down, and took the crew and an 11-man raft down to the canyon to the location below the falls. My job was to run errands up and down the canyon edge to fetch things that were needed for the project. The plan was to attach a small rope to the boat, put 2 men at the sides to row upstream, and 2 on the ends to row toward the other side of the river. The river was swift, and it wasn't but a few hundred yards around a bend in the river to the Lower Mesa Falls where they could be washed over to their possible demise. The first attempt was futile. The rowers were not coordinated, so the rapids carried them down around the bend toward the Lower Mesa Falls drop-off. I saw them descend out of sight around the bend, and I wondered what would happen to them. A few minutes later, they came carrying the boat back up to the original starting point on my side of the river to start over again, which they did, and made it on the second try. The small rope was used to pull the cable across the river, and a cable cart was set up to film the falls. I got paid $50 for my part as an errand boy. It was a good adventure for me. Okay, let's head back to Ashton from here. There's been something on my mind, and I've shared it in the past on other videos, but it's worth another listen as we enjoy this wonderful world in this part of scenic Idaho. I'm Mike Prickett. Do you ever wonder who you are or why you're here? Or what's the reason or purpose for your being here? It's a bold move for me today, but let me give you some answers that I hope will make you feel better about yourself by the end of this message. The universe is a huge place. It's so big that scientists have never found an end to it. They've defined our galaxy, and they've identified that there are countless other galaxies, but they've never found an end to the space they occupy. The thought of such vastness causes a man to realize how small he is relative to time and space. When we look downward through a microscope, we see an endless universe of microscopic particles that we know exist because we've seen them through powerful microscopes. But an end to particle sizes has never been found. Even atoms have parts. Science has identified particles smaller than atoms they call quarks. But is there anything smaller than quarks? Yes. They're muons, particles that hold quarks together by some unseen force. Much like the association of protons and electrons in the atom. Whether looking outward in space or downward through a powerful microscope, the conclusion is the same. The universe must be endless and highly organized. It can be a daunting thought. Elements have been found that make up the substances we see around us, and we know that the elements can't be destroyed. They can be changed by the addition or subtraction of other elements they associate with, but they're always there in their elemental form, manifesting themselves by chemically or physically reacting or cooperating with other elements. But they're never destroyed. Particles of elements have been seen moving around, seemingly on their own, being attracted to or repelled by other particles depending on their polarity and momentum. Seeing what happens through a microscope causes us to see the same way, a resemblance with the behavior of the planets in the universe. Polarity and a degree of gravity or magnetism seems to be the unseen forces that control movement and proximities between particles and planets in relationship with one another, regardless of their size. There are a lot of mysterious creatures on this planet. We know that the Earth is in a special location in the universe that makes it possible for life to have all that is needed to sustain it. None of the other planets that are seen in our galaxy have that capacity. An important part of the environment needs to sustain life on a planet is an abundance of water and oxygen. Temperature within a particular range must also be maintained for living things to keep from burning up or freezing to death. In order for such an environment to be provided, a specific proximity and a specific orbital pattern in relation with the Sun have to be sustained. So how did the Earth get to be so special? So it appears that the Earth and all of the life that is in it, both flora and fauna, can be seen as an organization of the elements. Okay, that's cool. So what caused all of this to be so organized? Even if it is simply evolution or happenstance from the chaos of a Big Bang, which I don't believe it is, it seems logical that some being of high intelligence had to have organized all of this stuff. It seems that millions of highly organized creatures and the precise coordination of all the flora and fauna on the Earth had to be put in place by some being of extremely high intelligence. Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr carried on a friendly argument for a long time about that stuff. Niels Bohr was a proponent of quantum theory, while Einstein argued that there had to be an intelligent being, even a god, to organize all of this stuff, and that, in his words, quote, God does not play dice, end of quote. While quantum physics can only find its origin from chaos. Quantum physics owes its development to mathematics. I call it mortal mathematics because even the best math known to man can only measure things in 3 dimensions using 90-degree angles, x, y, and z. Measurements can only be made by mortal math in approximations. Otherwise, the exact circumference of a circle or the exact volume of a sphere could be defined by it. That's why pi is used to measure round things, 3.14 and onward, adding numbers to infinity with no stopping place. Mortal math, with all of its organization and its wonderful creations, has its limitations in 3 dimensions, while time and space appear to be non-dimensional and go on forever. What Einstein saw in the development of his theory of relativity was endless time and space. If it were a college course, it could be called Eternity 101. E equals mc squared also includes the component of time, but I'll reserve that for another discussion and another time, no pun intended. Now, in an effort to get to the point, let me see if I can share my thoughts without unnecessary complication. So how does this stuff have anything to do with human existence? What does it have to do with the purpose and existence of a man? As a part or a place to start, men wouldn't be here if such an organization of the elements were not in place before he showed up on this planet. Logic dictates the importance of the following advice to the traveler. So, what is a man? Well, if you look at a man through chemistry and physics, he's a combination of the elements. The human body is about 20% carbon and about 70% of 2 elemental hydrogen particles mysteriously clinging to a single elemental particle of oxygen. The combination of these 2 elements, hydrogen and oxygen, make up the most abundant surface on Earth. We call it water, H2O. An organization of carbon and water, along with portions of numerous other elements, make up the body of a man. So is that all that a man is, just a combination of elements? Or is there more to a man than that? There's got to be more than that, when considering his ability to think and act and move his head, hands, feet, eyes, and other parts in a way that he chooses in order to make decisions, accomplish specific tasks, and pay attention to, and to act or react to certain sets of circumstances. With that in mind, there must be more to a man, and to other living creatures as well, for that matter, than just an organization of the elements. In addition to elemental organization, there is also recognized a generous degree of intelligence. We've identified that the elements that things and creatures are made up of are indestructible and are always around somewhere in some condition or another. But what about intelligence? It seems logical that when the body of a man was created by a God with superintelligence, the organization of elements into a body would be useless exercise without the inclusion of intelligence. For a plan such as this to succeed, there had to be an endless degree of charity. There is no comfort in being all alone at the top of anything, only loneliness, uselessness, and misery. We see all around us that intelligence exists in degrees, depending on the capacity of each of the creatures on the planet. Is intelligence also elemental, existing somewhere in some condition or another, and in a certain invisible place? Or is intelligence better defined as a gauge or capacity of something more substantial, such as an eternal being or a living spirit? So it's not intelligence that is elemental, but a spirit, an eternal and substantial being with a measured degree of intelligence. If the elements are always in existence, then the element of spirit must also be always in existence somewhere in endless space. It can't be seen in a three-dimensional world as a substance, but it plainly must substantially exist somewhere, or every living creature as we know them would be lifeless. So when God created man, as he did the earth by an organization of the elements, he had to introduce the eternal element of spirit into his creation in order to give it life and purpose. Did he create the spirits? No. God did not have the capacity to create himself. If the spirits exist eternally, he couldn't create them any more than he could create the elements that were used to organize the earth and the universe. But he saw these spirits in need of further improvement, and it is responsible and reasonable to assume that with this in mind, he created an opportunity for them to be added upon. The purpose for all of this seemingly complicated exercise had to be to establish a condition for spirits to have an opportunity to increase their intelligence. They'd have that opportunity to choose for themselves the valuable things of mortal life, rejecting those that would make them impaired or even less intelligent. So the glory of God is intelligence, and intelligence exists in degrees. An essential part of increasing intelligence is charity. Having an endless degree of charity and having had more experience than the other spirits, God wanted to share his experience with them to become more intelligent like he is. It is impossible to increase intelligence without taking responsibility. Self-reliance must also be increased for individual growth to occur. The spirits of men are made stronger in a mortal condition by their being tempted by an opposite force that reduces their intelligence, if they choose to follow that force on a downward path and adopt a lazy existence. Calm seas never a good sailor made. Without opposition, it is impossible to gain greater intelligence and to become stronger through proper choices, self-reliance, and personal responsibility. So how does a man with a specific and unique personality have beneficial use of an earthly existence in the universe? He does so by choosing and acting responsibly and by following the example of a loving God who organized this world for the purpose of man's improvement. God created the body of a man by an organization of eternal elements for a specific purpose, not just as a mortal body that oxidizes and deteriorates over time, but as a temporary vessel for his eternal spirit to establish a greater degree of intelligence by his choices and conquests through his mortal experience. With his superior intelligence and the capacity to organize the elements, God can surely provide a resurrected body for resurrected spirits. I'm often asked if I'm staying out of trouble, and my answer is always no. If you're not having trouble, you're not doing anything. If a man is determined to gain strength, he'll have to struggle. Hard times can make you great. Be anxiously engaged in a good cause and be tempered by the hard times, added upon and improved in the process of following the example of a living and loving God and by making good decisions. Babylon, being on the downward road with no foundation in the truth, will fall. Don't you fall with it. I'm Gary Isaacs with the Ike Pickett Show. I hope you enjoyed the ride as much as I did today. Open my website, myintegritypath.com, to learn more about this changing world. I want you to be prepared for what's happening now. Knowledge is power. Read or listen to my books, Standing Up to the Coup and Searching for Bitcoin. In the meantime, keep in mind who you are and why you're here, and sleep peacefully at night knowing that your integrity and your savings are in your own private custody. Unless they aren't yet. If not, I can help you fix that.